Welcome back to Long Time Ago movie and TV show ranking for Star Wars. This is part two of it. If you haven't watched part one, go and watch that. If not, you get in the top 10. So yeah.
And part two is going to be a lot longer than part one.
Oh really? Yeah.
Just so you know, Adam.
Because there's a lot of prequels in there that you have to try and sort of talk me around.
Well, I don't need to talk you around. I just need to explain to you why you're wrong.
It's ridiculous. So I'm going to go straight in. My number 10, Bad Batch.
Okay.
It's a good series. Had some good moments. Again, another one that I've only watched through once, but I'm sure I will watch it again at some point. The characters are quite enjoyable. We meet them first time in Clone Wars, so we know them pretty much straight away, don't we? So it was an enjoyable series.
It is
straight off of Order 66 as well, right?
Yeah. Can't get enough Order 66 as far as I'm concerned.
No. So it was just good. Yeah. Your number 10? I better do my bits quick if you're going to do your long talk about how you think the prequels are good.
I won't spend too long, but Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, number 10.
Okay.
Once again, why do people not like this movie? It's so good.
Okay.
Star Wars.
Give me your reasons then.
Okay. First of all, right. Is it a perfect film? Absolutely not. No. Star Wars was born from 1930s Saturday morning matinees like Flash Gordon. That's where George Lucas got the idea for Star Wars in general. Now, I can't think of another Star Wars film that is more like a Saturday morning matinee than Attack of the Clones. I think it's an absolutely brilliant film as far as I'm concerned. Mm-hmm. Does it have bad dialogue? Yes. Mm-hmm. Does it have some ropey acting?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. But does it have an amazing story? Yes, it does.
Does it?
It does. Now, I went to cinema to see this 6 times now, and I lived in Watford at the time, and the closest cinema to me was, I think, 6 miles away, and I was a very, very lowly shop worker at the time, and I couldn't afford to get a taxi every time to go to the cinema because I didn't have a car at the time, and I walked the 6 miles to go to the cinema to watch this film. That's dedication, and if I didn't like it, I wouldn't have walked 6 miles. Now, there's many reasons why I enjoyed
6 miles 6 times.
No, only one. I did it once.
Oh, okay.
No. The rest of the time I got taxis. But
fair enough.
Now, things I love about it: the Geonosian Arena Jedi battle.
I think I mentioned that in part.
Yeah, you did. And now I would find it very hard pressed to pick another scene in all of Star Wars where you see that's as good as when you see 40 or 50 Jedi all running with their lightsabers towards laser blaster bolts and them deflecting them. And then you see in this absolutely amazing battle where they're just, absolutely getting pummeled by droids. I mean, the whole scene is just brilliant. It leads to the start of the Clone Wars, which is something that we've heard about from Obi-Wan Kenobi in Episode 4. I was once a Jedi Knight like your father. I fought in the Clone Wars. It was really, really great. And I read in the 90s that it was loads and loads of Boba Fett's that would be the clones, but as it turns out, that was actually quite true. It was Boba Fett in a way, but obviously it was Boba Fett's Jango Fett's clone. So I thought that was really cleverly done. Jango Fett, the whole idea of him being the template of the clones, how I love the detective story that Obi-Wan goes on to try and find out who's trying to assassinate Padme, and he finds out about Master Cypher Diaz ordering a clone army, and the Jedi didn't know anything about it, which is why the Jedi then realized that they've lost their ability to see through the Force. which is something that's happened because the Dark Lord of the Sith, his presence is, is literally taking over the galaxy. It's something the Jedi didn't know until this point. Seeing the small scenes where you see Palpatine manipulating Anakin, telling him he will be the greatest of all Jedi, even more powerful than Master Yoda. I mean, those moments were absolutely brilliant. Christopher Lee as Count Dooku, possibly the greatest Sith. The greatest actor they could have picked to be a Sith Lord. Absolutely brilliant. And how he with ease just fights with his curved lightsaber and takes out Obi-Wan and Anakin with absolute ease. The Yoda fight, absolutely brilliant. The speeder chase through Coruscant. My favorite planet in Star Wars is Coruscant, and the things the amount of time you spend in Coruscant and the things that you see in Coruscant, I think the special effects are absolutely amazing. The relationship between Obi-Wan and Anakin, while it won't be explored more until the Clone Wars comes along, you could see, there was a closeness there, but there was also a resentment there. I just feel it's a middle chapter that does the perfect thing between episode 1 and 3 to get you from 1 to 3, because what's going to happen in 3, but you needed that middle chapter to get you there. It's much like the Two Towers in the Lord of the Rings movies. It's the hardest. It's the hardest. Right, note that down for another podcast.
No,
you haven't seen the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
I can't get on with it.
Okay, Adam, you're now fired from a long time ago. Oh my word! This is news to me. I have never heard this before.
That's offended a lot of people.
It's just offended me. Yeah. Now, okay, we'll have to park that. I don't know if I can get over the shock of that, but we'll park that. Anakin's finding out that the Tusken Raiders have kidnapped his mother, and she dies, and his killing them all, even the women and the children. That scene was absolutely brilliant. I thought he shows some real darkness in that moment where he's killing the Tuskens. The look on his face when his mother dies. I mean, I mean,
not too dissimilar to what we saw in the Obi-Wan series.
Absolutely,
at times.
And same sort of time period as well. So I love the prequels. People will say they're not very good films, and I can understand why they'd say that. But for someone who like me, who takes more than just the storyline of the film out of the Star Wars films, I take the mysticism, the lore, I can't really explain it, but the things that are going on in the backgrounds, underneath the surface of the main story, that's the stuff that I really love, and the prequels have that more than any of the other Star Wars films. And don't get me wrong, I understand why people don't like Attack of the Clones. I genuinely do, but I'm not one of them, and I think number 10 is the perfect spot for it on my list.
Fair enough. Yeah, I was going to say, if that's how long you're taking to talk up number 10, this is going to be a long, long
mate,
ride.
The top five are. I'm probably going to change it before we get to them.
Number 9, Force Awakens for me. Force Awakens, good film, pretty good. Introduced new characters. Did I like the new characters? Not really. No, not so much. You could see what they were trying with it. So, like, your Poe Damerons, your Han Solo, and then you've got they kind of threw a bit of a curveball with Finn and Rey, I suppose. So Rey was the Luke Skywalker of it, and Finn was not so much. Finn was just some coward who overcame his fears by the end of the film, only to find them again in the sequels to that.
Yeah, but that's
it's
what
not about
Force
that.
Awakens for.
It's not about that.
Yeah.
The Force Awakens, it was a good film. I quite enjoyed it. So,
No, I think they had potential. Poe,
it
Finn, and even Ray to a certain extent. I mean, I think Ray was actually, and Kylo Ren and Ray were probably the two standouts, which this probably should be because they're the two main characters. But
I
think
thought
they didn't progress them.
Yeah, no, yeah. I think they put everything out there. You know, they gave everything potential. Let's just say the sequels to that could have been improved upon, and it would have. Like I think you said it in the last episode that the sequels let down this episode.
Yeah.
8 and 9 let down 7.
Yeah.
So
the problem, I mean, sorry to retread it, but the problem with episode 7 is you can stick it on Disney Plus now, and you get to the end and you're like, oh god, I can't wait for the next one, and then you remember the next one and you think, oh, that was pointless me watching that.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a waste, really.
I liked the scene where I didn't like the scene where Han dies because we didn't really want him to die, but the episode that it sends Chewie into, you know, he goes absolutely mental. That was fun. Just going, right, let's have it.
You're right. There's a lot of good stuff in the Force. A lot of good stuff.
So that's my number 9.
Okay, my number 9 is, and again, this may change because it's very new, but Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Okay.
I mean, we don't need to spend too long on this one because we've literally just done 6 episodes talking about it.
Exactly.
6 hours, and we're going to do a retrospective fairly soon.
Yeah.
But I overall loved it. Anything with Vader and Obi-Wan in was top tier. Really enjoyed it. Not so keen on the side characters particularly, but
the other storylines weren't.
Didn't do anything to ruin it for me
much.
Again, lovely callbacks to the prequels. Team Prequel over here loves that. I mean, I'm not going to say too much more about that because, as I say, we're going to talk about it again later on in the future.
Okay, good. Number 8 for me, Revenge of the Sith. Why are you shaking your head?
Should be a lot higher than that.
It should be a lot higher than that. Revenge of the Sith. Now, this one I have watched recently. I said to you before, and I think I said it on the podcast, that I would watch it in preparation for Obi-Wan. It's good. Yeah, it's good. Of the prequels for me, it is good. It comes straight in, killing Dooku, which I'd forgotten about at that point, actually. You know, and that was like, oh yeah, that's quite cool. You know, killing him straight off the bat, and obviously Anakin progressively getting darker and darker throughout the film. It was good. I just find that there's some questionable scenes and some questionable makeup in places.
Please enlighten me to these questionable scenes and makeup moments.
Well, the questionable makeup was the Emperor becoming Palpatine. Sidious. I looked at that and I thought, I'm sure they could have done better back in those days. It's not that old. I feel like his actual trilogy makeup was better.
Again, I'm going to jump in there and say, but he'd literally just been freshly burnt. So once he feels slightly better.
I get that, but
I mean, you're probably not going to remember. Did you not think as soon as he put the hood up and sat down and spoke to Anakin, instantly with that hood up, he became the Emperor that we remember from the original trilogy? It was just because he wasn't wearing the hood, I think. Right. Kind of, in my opinion.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
Question.
The battle between Anakin and Obi-Wan was great. Oh, sorry, that's not my question.
I was going to say that was the question.
That wasn't too bad. Questionable scenes. Let me think. Clone Troopers. Very well trained, as we've seen. We know they're really good, trained, well trained militia. Militia,
Yeah.
how do you pronounce that word? Um, as soon as Order 66 hits, all of a sudden they can't shoot straight. What's with that?
Yeah, but
Yeah, but I know
Jedi.
you're gonna. I know what you're trying
They're
to do.
Jedi. They're not. They're not shooting
right.
at droids, are they?
So that was a questionable scene, and also the
the disgust that's on this side of the microphone is just
the James L. James.
palpable.
No.
Okay, admittedly, that Well, anyway, well, when I get to
Moving
Revenge
on.
of the Sith, when I get to Revenge of the Sith, we'll debunk all of that. What number are we on? I'm
number 8. We're on number 8.
Okay, number 8, The Mandalorian.
Oh, okay.
Now, The Mandalorian came out just before The Rise of Skywalker, and it came out, I think, a month before The Rise of Skywalker came out, the season 1.
Okay, yeah.
Now, we'd previously had Solo, and we'd previously had The Last Jedi, and you could argue that Solo didn't do very well because of the things that went on behind the scenes in terms of directors changing and the fact that there was a bit of a fan protest because of The Last Jedi. But as a huge Star Wars fan, I was kind of like, oh no, I'm sure this is going to be good, but I'm not sure, because everything Disney's done so far, well, not everything, but most of what Disney's done so far hasn't been fantastic. And The Mandalorian came on, and as soon as that first episode aired, I was on board. This was the greatest thing I'd seen. It was so nice to see aspects of the original trilogy, and aspects of the prequel trilogy, and even aspects of the sequel trilogy, all combined perfectly in a succinct story. Great characters, not a single bad character. Yes, it was a bit episode of the week or planet of the week. Not going to deny that.
Jumped around a bit. Yeah.
He had to go here, and then he had to get this to go to the next thing. And that happens throughout the first 2 seasons, but it didn't make the program bad in any way. In a lot of ways it made it.
More on that when it gets to my talk on the Mandalorian. I
think the Mandalorian carries on storylines that never finished from the Clone Wars, and storylines that never finished from Rebels. So if you're a huge Star Wars fan who consumes all Star Wars media, you had a bit of an advantage to those people who were casual Star Wars fans and didn't really see it felt quite special to you. That it wasn't being made specifically for you, but you got things that, while it didn't really matter if people who hadn't seen Rebels or Star Wars got it, it kind of, it had that. I was like, that sort of feeling. That was really cool. The Moff Gideon, Grogu, Din Djarin. I mean, all fantastic characters, as I say. It's had the only moment in all of Star Wars where, and I'm going to admit this on a podcast, where I cried.
Season finale, season two
finale, when Luke Skywalker walked through the door, and it took his hood down. I was bubbling, and this was the Luke. We just seen Luke Skywalker just be Luke Skywalker, absolutely massacring those droids. He walks out, he takes his hood off. It's Luke Skywalker that we always wanted to see, not the one we saw in The Last Jedi. And that happened.
Justice. It was justice.
Yeah, it was justice. And I was just about getting over like the tears, and I was pulling myself together. I was being a man again. And then all of a sudden R2-D2 rolls past him and stops next to him. And then I start all over again. And I'm sitting there going, oh my God, and Steph's laughing at me. And and it will always be one of those moments that I'll cherish, that they gave me as a Star Wars fan. I love The Mandalorian, and I'm sure once the series, again, I'm going to repeat myself, it's going to go up, it's going to get higher, I'm certain of it, by the end. I just love this show so much, and I cannot wait for the next season.
So that's your number 8.
Yep.
Number 7 for me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. It was
Yeah.
a good story. It was a good story with some amazing scenes. We don't need to go into it too much more than that because,
No.
as you said, we've already been over it. So, number
Yep.
7, Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Okay. Number 7, episode 1, The Phantom
Oh,
Menace.
that's wrong. You sure about that?
Number 7, yeah.
Sure, you've already had that.
No, no.
That didn't make top 10, did it?
Yeah. Yeah. I
Really?
think you'll find it did. Yeah. I think you'll
Top
find
10?
it. Do you know why it made top 7? Because
I'm
it's
sure you're
one
going
of
to
the.
tell me.
I'm certainly going to tell you. So you sit back, grab some snacks and drinks, and enjoy. Right. I
Here
will
we
not
go.
hear a bad word of this film. Again, does it have some bad dialogue? Yes. Does it have some
Yeah.
bad acting? Yes.
Yeah.
But I
Very.
can't.
We've spoken about child actors.
We have and Yippee and Squeeze Me and things like that. Yeah, okay, it's not great, but I'm sorry if I don't watch Star Wars and judge it for that tiny small part of the movie that you get that in. You know, I love this film so much. I went to cinema 7 times to watch this film.
Okay.
Again, going back to The Force Awakens, and I was saying to you when the lead up to this film, now the lead up to this film in 1999, I was approaching my 21st birthday. I was in the full swing of young adulthood.
Yeah.
I had me and my mates would be going out all the time, and we would talk Star Wars. We would we'd have huge barbecues of 30 people in our back garden and drinking beers and talking Star Wars. We were all excited about Star Wars was coming back. Star Wars coming back. This was before DVDs.
Yeah.
I'd have VHS tapes where I'd go to work, but before I went to work, and because I'd found out that there was an interview or a trailer that was going to be on the Big Breakfast or a morning TV show, I'd stick the VCR on and I'd press record so that when I got home, I could watch the interview or watch the trailer, because there was no internet back. Well, there was, but it wasn't. Really
it wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't what it is today.
No. I was hyped by this film, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
You weren't disappointed even at first viewing. You weren't.
No, do you know what? I'll going back to the Attack of the Clones. I must admit, the first time I watched it, I'd read the book, the novelization, before I went to see the film, and I never did it again afterwards. And it obviously the novel fleshed stuff out where the movie couldn't do, and I was a little bit, that didn't happen, and that didn't happen, and it took till the second viewing for me to get on board with the Attack of the Clones. Okay. Phantom Menace, I've loved it since the first time I watched it, and I say I watched it at the cinema 7 times. I had a pirate VHS of it, which was awful, but I must have watched it 100 times before it actually officially came out on VHS. I had the soundtrack, the first John Williams Star Wars soundtrack, and
it's probably the best part of the film, to be fair.
Well, it's one of the good parts of the film. And I used to have some mates that came over, and they'd come over after work, we'd all hang out. I'd sit there with my earphones on while they were sat in the room with me, listening to the soundtrack, and they'd be sitting there going, "So, how's it going, Martyn?" And I'd just be sitting there listening to the soundtrack, because the soundtrack was absolutely brilliant. I mean, where do I start? The pod race.
What, you haven't started yet?
No. The pod race. Seeing the Jedi in their prime. I mean, seeing the things that the Jedi could do. I mean, watching, all of a sudden you were watching Jedi just deflect laser bolts at 100 miles an hour, doing the thing that I think is essential Star Wars now. Seeing the Sith, the Palpatine, the great thing was I knew that Senator Palpatine was Darth Sidious or the Emperor. Right. Before no one knew that, and I was surprised that no one knew it, but because I was such a big fan, I knew that Palpatine was the Emperor. Watching the balcony scene where Darth Maul's talking to Darth Sidious, and he's saying, finally we will reveal ourselves to the Jedi, at last we will have revenge. Fist pump. That was absolutely brilliant. As you said, the lightsaber duel between Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan and Anakin, probably, it's difficult for me to pick a favorite, but it probably is my favorite of all of
Darth Maul.
Yeah, Darth Maul. So what did I say?
Anakin.
Oh, so Freudian slip. going back to Tatooine, being on Mos Espa, Watto. I love the character of Watto. Qui-Gon Jinn, my favorite Jedi in Star Wars. The Jedi that I've said it before, but the Jedi that I think is one of the most important characters in Star Wars, because if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have had any original trilogy.
Yeah.
Seeing the Imperial Senate and how Palpatine manipulated his way to become Chancellor. Or one thing I hear a lot is, "Oh, the politics, oh, the politics." It's like,
You've heard that from me in the last episode. I said that.
Yeah, but here's the thing: George Lucas was presenting an allegory of how Julius Caesar took the Roman Republic and did what he did and turned it into an empire, a Roman Empire. So he took that storyline, and it's so similar. If you know the history of Julius Caesar, and how he manipulated the Senate to give him these powers, and to eventually, become. He never became emperor. I know it was Augustus, but it's such similarities. So the story is there, and it's happened in history to a certain extent, and I get really annoyed when people say, "Oh, but all dictators, in history have done this." And I think
what I can say. Oh, sorry. What I can say for it is, at least it did attempt to try something new. It wasn't a remake of the original trilogy in a different format. It was something new.
Yeah,
with a cool badass bad guy.
Yeah. I mean, it's the film that sets up the saga in a way, and I think it does an excellent job at that. I think the other thing is that again, I've mentioned nostalgia, but I was born in '78, so I was 5 when Return of the Jedi came out. So while I'm definitely an original trilogy kid who grew up with the original trilogy, I wasn't old enough to experience the hype of the original trilogy. So imagine someone who loves Star Wars to the extent that I do, and then all of a sudden a new trilogy comes out.
Yeah. I do remember the hype for it, to be honest. Yeah. I was at school. I must have been 14, 15.
Yeah.
And I do remember the hype being just insane for it. But I'm pretty sure I was looking forward to it. And then they gave us Jar Jar Binks.
Yeah, I mean, I can't sit here and defend Jar Jar Binks. I can't. But what I can defend is the fact that Jar Jar Binks doesn't ruin the film for me.
No, that's fair. That's fair. He does for a lot of people, but
well, that's the thing. I think people fixate too much on what they don't like. And they I think it was about a year ago. Steph and I both sat and watched The Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones one night after the other, and I sat there and I hadn't watched them in a couple of years, which is unlike me. I usually have Star Wars on quite a lot, and hadn't watched them a couple of years, and I sat there and after each film I thought, I just don't get it. I don't understand why people don't like these films, and I'm a really discerning critic for movies. I genuinely are. You know what I'm like about watching films, and we've talked about other films in the past, and I'm like, but it's a blind spot maybe for Star Wars, and I totally get that. But I will die on my sword for The Phantom Menace. I think it's a great film. I think when you watch episode 1 to 6, I think if I was a fresh Star Wars fan who'd never seen it before, and I watched episode 1 to 6 as a 7-year-old or something like that right now, I think it would be the perfect saga. I think that it just flows so well together. So one thing I would suggest to people that don't like these films is perhaps go into it thinking differently. Think, okay, I'm watching this as one big movie. I'm not watching these as separate entities. I'm watching it as a one long movie. And I think if you go into it like that, I think speaking for myself, I love it. I love it.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Sorry.
That's number 7 for you.
Yeah.
Okay, number 6 for me then is A New Hope. What have I got to say about A New Hope? It's the original. You know, it was new and exciting back in the day, but obviously we're too young to have seen it. I can only go by the stories that my dad told me about, like, you know, people queuing up to go to the cinema. But even then, like the first time I watched it, it was just something completely different. Even in the 90s or whenever it was that I watched it, early 90s, it would have been.
You would have been
Even
watching
then,
special edition, probably.
yeah, I think so. Yeah, but even then, it was something completely new, and I was gripped, absolutely gripped.
Mm.
You know, lightsabers, just awesome,
Yeah.
awesome. As a film, yeah. Last time I watched it, I felt there were not issues with it, but I felt it was a bit slow, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Not a bit slow, but slower than I remembered it being, or not quite as good as I remember it being as a kid when I watched it. That's
Okay.
just my thoughts on that, but still a great film. Still a
Yeah.
great film.
Yeah. I mean, I'll come on to it eventually, but yeah.
Mm.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, you're up next on number
So
6.
number 6, the Clone Wars series, number 6. This for me is one of my favorite. You know, as I said earlier, we're getting into territory now where it's difficult for me to pick a favorite child. The Clone Wars series I absolutely love so much because I already love the prequels, but the Clone Wars enriches the prequels to such a large extent. It goes back and tells you things that you didn't know about the Phantom Menace,
and they're
the
better than the prequels, aren't they? So,
well, no, they're not. But nice
doing
try.
everything to watch.
Yeah, but
and this was our last episode of A Long and Long Time.
I mean, it did several things. It showed Palpatine consolidating his power as Chancellor. So when he did finally pull the trigger on Order 66, you had more context about how he did it. I mean, there was one episode I think where a 3-part episode where you saw how he managed to manipulate and take over the banking clan. So he was, as Chancellor, responsible for all of the money in the galaxy until they, you know, managed to put new leadership in order. But obviously, it was him manipulating it so that when the Empire finally took over, he had all the access to the money, which in turn enabled him to afford to be able to build the Death Star. Yeah. I mean, we're talking in-depth stuff here on a 3-part arc that probably not many people thought, you know, much of at the time. You saw a very important part was you saw the relationship between Anakin and Obi-Wan and how they were more like brothers and you saw more of them as master and apprentice, and how Anakin's power grew over the series and how he became the really powerful Anakin Skywalker between episode 2, who let's be honest, didn't do very well against Count Dooku, no. and by the beginning of episode 3 can chop his head off and quite easily beat him. You know, you saw how Palpatine manipulated both sides of the war, of the sides of the people, the Separatists and the Republic, and how when Order 66 happened, there wasn't any question from the galaxy, the public in the galaxy, that it was a coup by the Jedi, because Palpatine had, you know, manipulated the public into thinking that the Jedi had were warmongers. And, you know, it goes back to when Qui-Gon says in episode 1, and I think Mace Windu says a similar thing in episode 2, you know, we're keepers of the peace, not soldiers. But by the end of the Clone Wars, the Jedi were seen as soldiers, and there were generals in an army. And, you know, after 3 years, the public had become sick to death of the war. And so when Palpatine put out there that, you know, the Jedi had tried to kill him and take over, there wasn't any question. And, you know, that's all through the Clone Wars we find this out. We see Anakin's frustrations with the Jedi Order, how you know, you saw him questioning their decisions, and, you know, how they treated Ahsoka. Again, so much more context why in episode 3 all of a sudden Anakin is willing to just go against the Jedi so quickly. Ahsoka, again, as repeated previously, seeing her progress from, you know, this quite annoying little kid to one of the most powerful and wise Jedi throughout the series, to leaving the Jedi Order because she doesn't believe in what they've become, you know, and how she left Anakin, and how that hurt Anakin so much that, again, his faith in the Jedi was shaken. The movie quality by the end, lightsaber duels, the space battles were like movie quality, things we'd see in the movies. It was great. The animation was fantastic. More understanding of the Force through the Clone Wars. You know, how the Sith had diminished the power of the Jedi to be able to see through the Force. How Qui-Gon was able to come back, how Yoda discovered how Qui-Gon was able to come back through the Force, through the midichlorians, explaining the midichlorians as a concept through the Force, so that how Obi-Wan and Yoda could commune with that Qui-Gon in the future, which again leads on to things we saw in the Obi-Wan series, and again through the original trilogy, how they were able to train Luke through the Force, and how I think we're going to see Anakin appear to Ahsoka in the Ahsoka series as a Force ghost. You know, I could go on and on and on and on and on about the Clone Wars and what it gave us. And of course, there were some bad episodes of the Clone Wars. I'm not going to stand here and say
there is a lot of filler in there, and there's a lot of slow burns.
Absolutely, but by season 4, I would argue there's very, very little filler, because they start to go to 4-part arcs every single episode. There's a 4-part arc, then another 4, and you get more into the crime families and how the bounty hunters and all of the criminal organizations are taking over in the galaxy, because the Jedi aren't able to concentrate on peacekeeping like they did before, because they're now generals, which then leads to how the crime organizations are able to, you know, flourish during the time of the Empire. I mean, I could go on so much. This show is so rich, and it was a final gift from George Lucas to us all, the Clone Wars. And you know, I'm so glad they finished it, and I'm so glad Dave Filoni managed to finish it for us, you know, through George's vision. I mean, season 7. So nice. I could go on, but number 6.
Number 6 for you. Clone Wars. Good. Cool. That's all we're going to do today. We're going to come back.
Spoken for too long.
Spoken for too long. We're going to come back and do part 3 soon, where you'll see our top 5. We thought we were going to get the top 10 done, but Martyn doesn't know when to shut up. So we'll do top 5 next time. Cheers.
Bye.